So what you have here is a failure to communicate. So let's try communicating, huh? So what I'm trying to tell you is that Joe Biden won most of the Confederacy. I cannot explain Massachusetts. I cannot explain Minnesota or Maine except for Malcolm X's quote. When you're talking about the racist, white supremacists, stop talking about the South, because as long as you're south of the Canadian border, then you're South. White supremacy just coats the entire United States of America. So Joe Biden is going to win not only Massachusetts, Maine, and Minnesota. Minnesota picked Klobuchar, so that should show you how right-wing conservative they are. But also, Joe Biden won a bunch of Deep South Confederacy, old Confederate states, Tennessee, Texas, Alabama, North Carolina, Arkansas, Virginia, Oklahoma. Oklahoma had a very interesting role. You might be able to say they're in between, but you can't say Tennessee, Virginia, Arkansas, North Carolina, Alabama, or Texas was in between. They're definitely in the solid South. They're like, we're going to keep black people subjugated. We're going to keep this white racial totalitarian dictatorship going, and that's just the way it is. We're just going to carry it on until the very end. So some people want to try to say, well, states' rights, or it was the tariffs, or it was this, or it was that. But it was slavery. It was slavery. So I want to talk about a couple quotes that I found with Alabama. So why did Alabama secede out of the Union? Abraham Lincoln is elected. It's 1860, December. He's about to get inaugurated. South Carolina secedes, and then Alabama, like the follower that they are, Florida, Mississippi, they all just followed South Carolina's lead, which is what we're seeing right now. Right now, we're seeing South Carolina lead the brigade of right-wing conservative extremism, a bunch of bullshit to stop Bernie Sanders, right? But they went for Joe Biden. South Carolina went with Joe Biden, so now all the Deep South slave states are going to go. So Alabama, let's talk about Alabama. So why did Alabama secede? Why did any of the southern states secede? Because of tariffs, because of industry, because of the cotton, because of the states' rights. That's what it was, right? States' rights. Alabamans, they just were so about states' rights because, there's just a culture of democracy and solidarity in Alabama. No, it was the 1% ruling class, slave-owning class, drafted a bunch of poor Alabamans to go fight, and apparently racism is so goddamn powerful, as long as you could just, point to somebody else that they might be better than, then you could rob them blind, right? Well, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. That's George Wallace. Alabama produced George Wallace. Is that a big shocker? Is anybody shocked? And then also, well, let's just keep on with Alabama. So Alabama. The question of slavery as the rock upon which the old government split. It is the cause of secession. This is what G.T. Yelverton had said at the January 25th, 1861 secession convention in Alabama. The question of slavery is the rock upon which the old government split. It is the cause of secession. Slavery is the cause of secession. So December 1860, Stephen F. Hale, this is Alabama's ambassador to Kentucky, wrote a letter to the governor of Kentucky about the reasons Alabama seceded. In the South, where in many places the African race largely predominates, and as a consequence, the two races would be continually pressing together. Amalgamation or the extermination of the one or the other would be inevitable. Amalgamation, right? So either integration or just outright extermination. Those are the only two. What about, separate but equal? What about, just segregation? Nope. It's either we integrate or there's extermination between the two. That's it. Those are the only two choices. Can Southern men submit to such degradation and ruin? God forbid that they should. The election of Mr. Lincoln cannot be regarded otherwise than a solemn declaration on the part of the great majority of the northern people of the hostility to the South, her property, and her institutions. Nothing less than an open declaration of war for the triumph of the new theory of government destroys the property of the South, lays waste her fields, and inaugurates all the horrors of a San Domingo servile insurrection, consigning her citizens to assassinations and her wives and daughters to pollution and violation, all for what? To gratify the lust of a half-civilized Africans. All to gratify the lust of half-civilized Africans. Stephen F. Hale, the ambassador, Alabama's ambassador to Kentucky. It's racist as shit, totally racist, and he's like, hey, Mr. Lincoln being elected is basically a declaration of war, so we're going to declare war right back. Doesn't make any goddamn sense whatsoever, but it's slavery. Once again, right? The question of slavery, that's the rock upon which the old government split. That's the cause of secession. G.T. Yelverton said it at the Alabama Convention. Stephen F. Hale, Alabama's ambassador to Kentucky, is saying the same thing. So let's see. Well, there's an article eventually in the Constitution of Alabama that says, no slave in this state shall ever be emancipated by any act done to take effect in this state or in any other country. So no matter what laws other countries pass, a slave in Alabama remains a slave until the day that they die. It was Article 4, Section 1. So you could read Alabama's Confederate Constitution, and it specifically said we're going to protect slavery, the institution of slavery and white supremacy and racism. This is what we're going to stand for until the day that we die. So the last quote, this is a paragraph, but it's Robert Hardy Smith. This is an Alabama politician in 1861. So what did this Robert Hardy Smith, an Alabama politician in 1861, have to say? He says this: we have dissolved the late Union chiefly because of the Negro quarrel. Well, that's what he's going to call slavery, right? Oh, the old Negro quarrel. It's white people fighting about if black people are humans. But it's the Negro quarrel. No, it's a quarrel amongst, racist whites and not racist whites. Now, it is there. Excuse me. Now, we've dissolved the late Union because of the Negro quarrel. Robert Hardy Smith, an Alabama politician in 1861, said, now, is there any man who would want to reproduce that strife amongst ourselves, us white gentlemen, the elite, yet does not he who wish the slave trade left for the action of Congress? See that he proposed to open a Pandora's box amongst us and to cause our political arena again to resound with this discussion. Had we left the question unsettled, we should, in my opinion, have sown to broadcast the seeds of discord and death in our Constitution. I congratulate the country that the strife has been put to rest forever, and that American slavery is to stand before the world as it is, on its own merits. We have now placed our domestic institution and secured its rights unmistakably in the Constitution. We have sought by no epiphany, no euphony. We have sought by no euphony, E-U-P-H-O-N-E-Y. Euphony. We have sought by no euphony to hide its name. We have called our Negroes slaves, and we have recognized and protected them as persons, and our rights to them as property. Robert Hardy Smith. Robert Hardy Smith, Alabama politician, 1861. So, we wear it on our sleeves. We care about slavery so much. That's the only thing. This is the institution. We're going to defend an evil institution until the day that we die. We call our Negroes slaves. We've recognized, protected them as persons and rights to them as property. And when they say, I congratulate the country that the strife has been put to rest forever in 1861 because they seceded. There. Question over, right? You Americans get to keep your free country while us Confederate Deep South Southerners get to be racist pieces of crap against black people. Most whites in the South don't own blacks, so it doesn't help most whites. It's the 1% who own, the slaves. So it's just, again, poor whites fighting against their own interest, fighting against the liberation, emancipation of black folks when they need to be emancipated as well. But you can pick their pocket and make them poor as fuck as long as, hey, you're at least better than that black man over there, right? Hey, right there, you can testify in court. We would listen to you if you testify. Go, hey, you're at least better than that. well, I'm poor and homeless and don't have a house and have no place to go. Well, it doesn't, you're still better than that black man, huh? That's all right, huh? That's okay. So the last thing I want to mention is, okay, people are going to say, well, it's mostly black folks that are in the states. Yeah, I know. That's why it's so scary. In America, with the two-party system, Republicans and Democrats, we don't have a liberal opposition. We barely have an opposition party. When it comes to big business, when it comes to military, when it comes to recognizes Juan Guaido, it's, bilateral, bipartisan consensus. So when it comes to militarism and imperialism, when it comes to oppression of the world, the two-party system is definitely in cahoots with one another, which means there's no opposition. So if you're against the war, well, you could, choose a Democrat who's for the war. You could choose the Republican who's for the war. So if you don't want war, you don't have any place to go. You have no options to vote for when it comes to the two-party system. So that's what I think is going on with the southern states, is that you have a lot of old black people who are very conservative. The young black folks voted for Bernie Sanders, so the young black folks are paying attention. But the old black folks vote in a bigger block. They're more reliable when it comes to vote, and they're very, very conservative, which, it actually kind of makes sense to me. I'll tell you a little story. Not story, but just one issue, okay? So I remember talking to some black folks about child abuse, and I had said something about how, I just really hated child abuse, and if a person, strikes you, then you should strike them back. This is in a Malcolm X class, so I'm saying, Malcolm X says if any man lays their hand, puts their hands on you, you send them to the cemetery. And I said that makes sense for child abuse because you're just a kid, and so if anybody wants to abuse a kid, well, you should defend yourself. What kind of fucking crazy person? But anyways, when I said that, a couple black folks said, they said it in the name of black people. They said a black person could never say anything bad about their mother or father. They could never say that. Because why? Because they beat the shit out of them. Because there's violence. There's child abuse all over the... So one bad, terrible, awful thing that I can't stand about white people, black people are going to embrace and hold on to. So if you're opposed to child abuse like the war, where do you go? You can't go to the whites, the conservative whites, conservative blacks. They're all in unison. They're all in cahoots. It's authoritarian fascism, and it's a bunch of bullshit. It's just like this, slavery thing. With the slavery thing, it was just some fucking bullshit that they just want to grapple onto, even though it didn't benefit anybody. It was an evil that the entire community had embraced. And so when I look at the black folks in these southern conservative states, these deep south states, I mean, people might say, well, it's black folks who are voting and you're, pointing out all these white racists. I'm pointing out how conservative these states are, how ridiculously right-wing conservative. It doesn't matter if you're white or black. You could be a conservative, a right-wing conservative. I guarantee you there's slaves who are sitting there saying, Massa, you sure right. Sorry, but I mean, there's Uncle Toms in the system. And so when the Civil War had happened, what I'm trying to say is that there's Uncle Toms that had fought for their white master, their white slaver, their oppressor. In fact, every white man that was drafted were a bunch of Uncle Toms as well, because they're fighting for the 1%. Yeah, we want our 1% ruling class to have slaves. How does that help you? If they don't have slaves, they would pay you, to mow their lawn and shit. So that expands your opportunities. You can't compete with free. He has free labor. You can't ever, get into that business operation. How can you compete with free? So it's good for the white man to have, competition and not to have slavery if you're thinking about the economics of it in a very, stoic, literal sense. So the logic isn't there. It's racist. It's dumb. They are people. They are humans. Is it jealousy of black bodies? Oh, no. So the racism, my point is just to connect the conservative fault, the conservative right-wing fault. When it comes to the black folks in the old deep South Confederacy, they have apparently accepted the conservatives, conservative, racist, authoritarian bullshit amongst themselves. And so now, in order to be victorious, we have to run, they're the moderates. They, now the black folks in these deep South states are the white moderates. If MLK was around today, they would have voted against MLK. Bernie Sanders is carrying MLK's legacy on, but because he's got white skin, black folks are confused about it. Joe Biden was next to Obama, so that was it. I think some low information voters, poor public schooling, I think a lot of it has to do with that, but I think ultimately there's an overwhelming conservative pervasive culture. So black folks looking at the whites, look at all those Republicans and how conservative and how they're running shit, we're going to do the same shit, but we're going to do it over here on our side. And then that's, you know, there's still self-segregation. So 90% of most black folks still live in the Deep South. So for some reason, you know, when Kanye West said that, for 40 years, it's kind of a choice. And then that one guy was like, I'm hurt. I'm personally hurt by your words. I think Kanye makes a good point, but I think what Kanye didn't understand is, like, if you're born into slavery, how the fuck would you know what freedom and liberation was to begin with? So it was a choice. After 400 years, yeah, eventually they were just like, well, shit, we can't fight against these damn white oppressors. Might as well. So they did choose to, and I think that they're doing that now. I think they're choosing to say, you know, the right-wing conservative way, the Democrats who act like Republicans are the ones we relate to, but the Democrats who actually care about the working class and the poor, we don't understand that at all. We understand fascist authoritarianism. We understand beating up our kids. We understand exploiting our kids, use them for free labor out in the fields. We understand that. But what we don't understand is a white man who wants to give everybody health care. That's, you know, unfathomable. A white man who wants to carry Martin Luther King's legacy forward cannot even understand that. What the hell is happening right now? Free college, free child care, free health care. And, you know, you're going to be taken care of. We're going to have a chance. We're going to have a safety net in this. America's going to be great for the first fucking time ever. In South Carolina, the conservatives, black and white conservatives alike, do not see that, do not understand that, and they're fucking us over, and it's bullshit. So, yeah, Alabama is clearly, you know, this is where misinformation starts, so I've heard this shit all my life. It wasn't about slavery, it was states' rights and tariffs. When the fuck you ever heard of a southern man getting fucking pissed off about tariffs? Donald's got tariffs on every goddamn motherfucker. But you're listening to this, oh, he's from Alabama? Well, he must really, really hate tariffs. God damn, his hatred of tariffs are just, nobody says that. Nobody says that. So, when it comes to why did the South secede, why did the Civil War happen, and then what were the effects of the Civil War? America's united. We're a united country. We're against slavery now. Now we have to work on, you know, segregation or integration, try to work on, black people are human now. We hadn't been thinking about like that for a while. Now they are. So now where are they going to be in our society? And then organize everybody together, right? So that's great. If you want to be for the Confederacy, it means you fought against the United States. You fought against the Union. And in some respects, the Confederacy, like America is a confederacy of 50 states. And just wordplay, when people say Confederacy, the Confederacy, it sounds like, oh shit, right? The fucking Confederacy, there's the Confederacy of the 50 states today. We are, you know, a united 50-state confederacy, and I like that we're a union. Not that we're the old Confederacy, but just a confederacy in the terms of, you know, we're an amalgamation of states. We're, you know. So, I like that we're America. I like that Kentucky fought for Abraham Lincoln against slavery and for the United States of America. I like those things. And, but in order to, you know, teach the youth or whatever that it was all bullshit, you gotta fucking lie to them. No, we said we wanted states' rights, and they said, no, you shall not have states' rights. And then they invaded us and just started killing us for no reason. Oh, the slavery? Yeah, there was slavery. I think that's a revolutionary war to invade the southern nation and to liberate the fucking slaves, give them guns and say, you know what, we're a brand new fucking country, stop it with your goddamn slavery bullshit. That's a revolution. That's fucking revolutionary as fuck. To fight against slavery, that is always a good war. If there's the Egyptians enslaving Jews, anybody enslaving anybody, it's always good to go liberate those people. Yeah, so slavery is always an evil, forever and ever an evil, and it was revolutionary what Abraham Lincoln did. So people that want to rush off and say, Hitler was a smart man and the Confederacy was good, and George W. Bush he's a good man too. I don't know, I threw that in there, but when it comes to the Iraq War. But it's just, yeah, I think there's a culture of ignorance. There's a lot of stupid people out here, so maybe it's just, you know, talking to the riffraff. When you talk to the riffraff of, you know, America, maybe I should talk to the elites and the, you know, the influencers and the leaders. Because the riffraff, they don't know what the fuck's going on, and they don't encourage you. They're not supportive. They're very insecure. And, you know, we're all in the fucking boat. We're all in the ditch, so let's get in the ditch and work together and pull ourselves up out of this ditch. But, who gives a fuck, right? We're all poor, but fuck that guy. I got a little bit more than that guy, so I'm doing fine. So, yeah, don't tell me Alabama didn't secede because they love fucking slavery and white supremacy and racism. You're a liar. Alabama seceded out of the Union during the Civil War because they're a bunch of white supremacist, racist pieces of shit. They were dog shit, white, conservative, low-life pieces of dog shit, pieces, just guano, just white bat shit. That's why they seceded, because they, you know, wanted to protect slavery, make it a model for the world. We Americans fought the revolution for our freedom so we can own slaves. Now, everybody in the world, do what we just did. Divide humanity based upon the color of our skin instead of judging people by the content of their character. MLK died for some obvious shit. Alabama threw MLK in the jail many times. Rosa Parks wasn't allowed to sit on the bus because of Alabama. What the hell is that black woman doing sitting on the... That's Alabama. And Alabama is the same motherfuckers that voted for Joe Biden. So the black folks, they've been with these conservative right-wingers for their entire life. They've saturated through osmosis. They just soaked it in. And they've, you know, unfortunately, Martin Luther King said, with integration, perhaps integrating into a burning building is not a good idea. Seems to me like these older black folks, they're conservative because they're hanging on to the little bit that they got, which is what conservatives do. We got to keep it the same because we only got the few little bit of things that we got. Instead of saying shit needs to change, we need massive change, and we need to change this whole thing for the better for everybody. Oh, fucking Alabama.